The fork dropped from my hand and hit the plate with a sharp clang. Derek stood napkin still in his lap, voice raised enough for the entire table to hear. You either send us $3,000 for the party, or don't bother calling yourself family anymore. The table went still. Behind us, a server passed by, glancing once, then twice. I blinked hard. My coffee had gone cold. I hadn't touched my cake. Sloane didn't say a word. She just crossed her arms and looked at me like she was waiting to see if I'd perform on cue. Her mother, seated beside her, didn't look surprised at all. She adjusted her bracelets and took a sip of her wine. I pulled out my wallet. The silence hurt more than the demand. No one at the table, none of Derek's friends, none of Sloane's relatives intervened. No one said, "That's too far." Not even Derek himself blinked after he said it. I looked at the bills inside, then at my debit card. Then I put the wallet back in my purse. "I'll think about it," I said. "You've already said no enough times," Sloane muttered under her breath. "Just own it." Derek didn't stop her. He didn't stop anything. We left not long after that. I walked to my car alone. They didn't wait. They didn't offer me a slice of cake to take home or a hug. Derek barely looked at me. It was like I had failed a test I hadn't known I was taking. The parking lot felt colder than it should have for spring. I sat in the car, both hands on the wheel engine off, just breathing. They'd asked me to help pay for Diana's birthday/fundraiser 3 weeks ago. Said it was going to be simple. Then it turned into a venue, a sit-down dinner, floral arrangements, gift bags. Everything snowballed. And they expected me to foot the rest. "You already help," I'd said last week. "I pay for the girls' school lunches, the car insurance, the second mortgage payment that never got transferred back." Sloane had rolled her eyes. "Those are obligations, family support. This is celebration." Now, apparently, it was also a condition of belonging. That night I got home and didn't turn the lights on. I went straight to the kitchen, kicked off my shoes, took off the scarf around my neck and tossed it onto the counter. My phone buzzed once, twice. Group chat. Sloane Hope. This is just a moment of stubbornness. Derek. Let me know your decision by noon tomorrow. No love you, no good night, just that. I opened my banking app. Joint account active. Utilities auto-pay linked. Diana's event planner still listed under my backup card. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered. Then I tapped. Cancel. Cancel. Cancel everything. I turned off the notifications. Pushed the phone away. The kitchen was quiet. I made coffee, even though it was nearly 9 p.m. Something about the sound of it brewing grounded me. I didn't sit, just stood at the counter and watched the pot fill. The smell reminded me of mornings when Derek was small, when I packed his lunches and made 2 eggs before driving him to school. Back when everything felt harder, but somehow still had warmth. I poured a cup. No cream, no sugar. I took a sip and stared at the folder on the far shelf above the fridge, the one labeled Brandt Family Trust, Property Files. Tomorrow I'd pull it down. I turned off my phone and tossed it face down on the couch. It buzzed again 5 seconds later. Then again. Then once more, a minute after that. I didn't look. I sat at the kitchen table with the mug from last night still half full. Cold now. Bitter. The old safe box sat across from me. Metal. Heavy. Dented at the corner from when Derek dropped it, moving into his first apartment. I'd stored it high above the fridge ever since. I pulled it down that morning. Set it on the table. Didn't open it. Let it sit there staring at me like a mirror I wasn't ready to face. The texts started up again by 8 a.m. sharp. Derek, Mom. You're really going to do this over a party, Derek. We've always been there for you. Derek. We're family. Then the tone shifted. Derek. Honestly, this is selfish. Derek. You're acting like a victim. Again. Sloane petty and ungrateful. I said nothing, wrote nothing, hit no keys. Sloan started tagging me in comments, thinly veiled posts about unreliable people and bitter relatives who don't understand class. Someone liked them. Probably Diana. Maybe even Derek. I poured the old coffee down the sink. Made a fresh pot. No sound except the drip, drip, drip. It filled slow the way my chest felt, like something thick sitting right beneath my ribs. I stood by the window. Outside, the wind moved the neighbor's flag. I used to watch Derek play basketball in this driveway back when his voice cracked and his backpack was bigger than his shoulders. Back when he still asked questions instead of made demands. I poured the coffee into a clean mug and walked back to the table. Sat across from the safe box again. I hadn't opened it since Walter died. 3 years ago. He was always the one who handled papers, taxes, property. He labeled everything dated. Everything made copies of copies. I used to tease him about it. Called him a squirrel with a fax machine. When he passed, I told myself I'd get around to sorting it all. I didn't. Now the weight of that box felt like the only solid thing in the room. I ran my hand over the lid. The lock still worked. No rust. No key needed it used a code only I knew. One he chose. Our anniversary. I didn't punch it in. Not yet. Let them call me names. Let them twist my silence into guilt. There's power in not reacting, in not feeding the fire they're lighting. It took me 6 decades to learn this. Took me watching my own son grow into someone who could look me in the eye and say, "Pay up or you're out," and believe he was still the one being wronged. I took another sip. The coffee burned going down. I didn't flinch. The phone buzzed again. I let it. They could keep screaming into their echo chamber. I was done answering. By noon, I started sorting the top drawer in the hallway. Old bills cards, outdated insurance forms. I made 2 piles shred and keep. One envelope caught my eye. A recent HOA notice. Not addressed to Derek or Sloan. Addressed to me. Same property, same house. Still under my name. I set it aside and kept going. I scrolled. Stopped. Looked again. The photo used to be mine. Taken at the lake last summer. Derek's arm around my shoulders, the girls in front. Sloan on the edge holding a wine glass. I remembered the day. I brought the sandwiches. I paid for the cabin. Now I wasn't in it. Sloan had cropped me out. The edges blurred just enough to hide the cut. The caption said, "Grateful for real family." I didn't comment. Didn't like it. Didn't breathe for a moment. I turned off the screen and put the phone face down. The next day was Derek's birthday. I waited. Nothing came, no call, no invitation, not even a group text. Last year, I brought the cake. The year before, I rented the bounce house. This year, silence. I wrapped a gift anyway. A leather-bound planner. Simple, useful something I knew he needed, but would never buy himself. I wrote a note. Just, love Mom. Nothing else. I drove to their house around noon. The sun was high. Cars were already lined along the curb. I recognized Diana's BMW in the driveway. Balloons tied to the porch rail. I parked across the street. Walked up. Set the gift on the welcome mat. Knocked once. No answer. I turned back to my car. Didn't linger. The next day I checked. The gift was still there. So was the note. Day 2, same thing. Day 3, rain came. The paper started to curl. The ink bled through the envelope. By sunset, someone finally took it inside. No call, no message, no thank you. I sat in my kitchen that night, lights low. Phone on silent. The air thick and still. They had erased me. Not with a bang, not with a fight, but with a crop tool, a birthday snub, and a wet envelope no one wanted to touch. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I'd already done all the crying months ago. Quiet ones. The kind that come when you realize the people you raised can look you in the face and pretend they don't see you. I opened the drawer beneath the sink and pulled out my receipt box. Years of transfers, deposits, co-signed bills. I flipped through. March 2021, $650 for new tires. July 2022, summer camp deposit. December 2022, emergency plumbing fee for the house. All of it from me. Never repaid, never acknowledged. They didn't see it that way. They never would. To them, I was the help. The background. A blurred shape in the corner of a picture they wanted to retouch. I pulled the HOA letter back out, read it again, still addressed to me, still listed me as the property contact. I opened my laptop, logged into the portal, pulled up the property profile. Cedar Fall Lane, owner on record L. Rourke. My name, still mine. I clicked download documents, saved everything to a folder, labeled it personal, housing. Then I clicked over to a new tab. Searched estate attorney plus trust enforcement plus Minnesota. I copied down 3 names, closed the laptop, set it aside. Stared at the safe box still sitting on the table. I got up, poured the last of the coffee into the sink, and rinsed the mug. The drain made a soft groan as the water swirled down. In the silence, the doorbell rang. I grabbed a tin of cookies and drove over without texting. It wasn't a surprise visit. It was a grandmother stopping by. I parked on the street, same spot I always used. Same routine, same front path, familiar cracks in the pavement. When I reached the porch, something was off. The doorknob was gone, replaced by a keypad. I tried the bell, waited, heard movement inside. Then nothing. I waited again. 10 minutes passed. I knocked. No answer. The curtains shifted just once. A small hand, one of the girls, then pulled back quick. I knocked again, softer. Still nothing. I walked around to the side gate. Locked. Backyard quiet. That's when the text came. Sloan. Please don't come unannounced. It's not your home, not a question, not an apology, just a fact. Cold, final. I stared at it for a long time. Didn't type back. I walked back to my car, tin of cookies still in hand. That night I made dinner, barely touched it. Pushed peas around the plate like I was 10 again and didn't want to finish. I rinsed my dish, set it on the drying rack, wiped the counter twice even though it was already clean. Then I opened my bank app. Amazon Prime charge. $214. Not mine. I clicked deeper. Baby shoes, a white noise machine, silk pajamas, a toy set labeled Luxury Montessori Gift Box, all shipped to Cedar Fall Lane. My card was still active on their account. I remembered when Derek asked to borrow it, 2 years ago. Just to cover a diaper order, he said, "I'll remove it right after." He never did. I called the bank, reported the charge, flagged the card, requested a replacement. The woman on the phone asked if it was fraud. I paused, said yes. After the call, I sat at the table again, the safe box still there, the folder from the HOA beside it, a yellow sticky note now stuck to the top. Reminder, check utility statements. I opened the drawer, pulled out last month's mail, found a gas bill. Still listed under Cedar Fall Holdings LLC, still routed through my name. I opened the laptop again, pulled up the 3 attorneys I'd found, sent an email to the first one. "Hi, I'm seeking guidance regarding a property held in trust. There are recent issues with access and misuse of financial information. I'd like to schedule a consultation. Name, Lena Rourke. Location, Maple Glen. Availability, flexible. Thank you." I hit send. Then I made coffee. Let it brew slow while I stood with my arms crossed staring at the front door. It felt quieter in the house than usual, thicker. I poured a cup. No sugar, no cream, sat with it. I pulled out my planner and flipped to next Tuesday. Wrote 1 word in the 11:00 a.m. slot call. Then I crossed it out and rewrote it. Move. The porch light outside flickered once, then held steady. I left it on. The night didn't scare me. I closed the folder, pulled my phone off the charger, checked voicemail. 1 new message, unknown number. I fed another envelope into the shredder. Credit card offer, expired warranty, old catalog. I kept going. The hallway closet had turned into a graveyard of paper. Bills, manuals, birthday cards no one remembered sending. I was clearing space. Clearing noise. The shredder hummed steady. Pile after pile disappeared. Then I hit the red folder. Stiff spine. Labeled in Walter's handwriting. Cedar Fall Holdings. Property trust underlined twice. I stopped. Sat down on the floor. The shredder kept going behind me, chewing something I no longer cared about. The folder was thick. Heavier than I remembered. I opened it. First page certificate of trust. Walter's signature. My name beneath his. The date 7 months before he died. Property 118 Cedar Fall Lane. Beneficiary rights reserved. Occupancy conditional. Clause 4C circled in pen. My throat tightened. I hadn't seen this since we'd first signed it. Back then I didn't ask too many questions. Walter handled the fine print. I just trusted. Page after page, it was all there. Recorded deed. Ownership history. LLC assignment. My signature notarized. The last will attached, in black and white. No heir or family member may claim beneficial use of said property in instances of financial exploitation, elder manipulation, or misuse of personal accounts tied to the grantor. Triggering such violation shall result in immediate forfeiture of access pending documentation. I read it twice, then once more slowly. Derek didn't own the house. Never did. He lived in it because I let him. Or more accurately, because Walter let him on the assumption he'd be decent. I closed the folder, pressed it flat with my palm. I could feel the shift in the air, like someone had just whispered, "Get up." I didn't say a word, just stood, took the folder with me to the bedroom, opened the top drawer of the dresser, pulled out the key, walked it down the hall, unlocked the safe box, set the folder inside, closed it, spun the dial. I didn't smile yet. Not fully, but I felt the edges of something return. I poured coffee, pushed aside the pile of mail, cleared the table. There were still things to line up, still steps to take, but now I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't hoping. I had a file with my name on it and signatures to prove it. They thought I was standing outside a door I no longer owned. They didn't know I still held the key. I rinsed the mug, dried it, put it back on the hook. Then I opened my laptop again and refreshed my inbox. One new reply. From the attorney. I answered on the third ring. Derek's voice came fast low like he was pacing. "Can we just talk?" I didn't say yes, just stayed quiet. He kept going. "I know this whole thing looks bad. It's not about the money, it's about timing. We're in deep." I leaned back in my chair. Waited. He exhaled hard. "If we don't throw this party for Diana's donors, she pulls the funding. That's the reality." I blinked. Funding for her campaign. And for Sloane's podcast expansion. The sponsorship deals tied to it. My chest went still. "So the 3,000, it's not for a birthday." "No," he admitted. "It's for the fundraiser." Silence stretched. I didn't fill it. Derek stumbled. "We didn't lie. We just framed it simpler. You wouldn't understand the whole thing with Diana and optics." Optics. He said it like it made sense to everyone but me. "She needs this to look good," he added. "A strong family image, good turnout media coverage. The donors are watching." I closed my eyes, held the phone tighter. "You want me to pay?" I said, "so your mother-in-law can look powerful at a party I'm not invited to?" He didn't answer. "You used my card?" I continued to buy designer gift bags and audio equipment for a campaign I didn't vote for. Still nothing. I almost laughed. But it came out as air through my nose. "We're under pressure," he said finally. "You wouldn't understand." "You're right," I said. "I don't." He went quiet. The call shifted. Less fire now. More cold. "I didn't mean for it to get like this," he said. "But it did. She's my wife. And I'm your mother." The line held still. He tried once more. "You know how much Diana's done for us. The house, the girls, everything. If she pulls out, you're on your own." I finished. He didn't deny it. I heard a door close on his end. Voices in the background. Sloane, probably. The baby crying. Then a click. Call ended. I set the phone down, slow. So that was it. I'd raised a boy who thought image came before family, who chose performance over truth, who called when it was already too late. I stood, went to the safe, pulled the folder back out. Clause 4C. It hadn't changed. Exploitation, misuse, revocation of access. No court would question it. Not with evidence this clean. I flipped to the last page. The enforcement addendum. Signature line vacant. Meant for the trustee. Meant for me. I didn't sign. Not yet. Instead, I picked up my planner. Tuesday marked move. I turned the page. Wednesday blank. I wrote one word, lawyer. Then I poured fresh coffee and opened the attorney's email. The text came while I was folding towels. "Hey, just checking in. Sloane said you were too unstable to be around the kids. Everything okay?" I dropped the towel. Read it again, then again. I stared at the words like they were written in another language, but they weren't. They were sharp, meant to cut. Unstable. That's the word she chose. Not tired, not private, not busy. Unstable. I replied with one line, "Thanks for checking. I'm fine." I didn't ask for more. I didn't give more. I just tucked the phone into my pocket and kept folding. But something turned cold behind my ribs. By Sunday morning, the frost had spread. At church, I walked through the front steps like I had for 20 years. Same pew, same people. But that day, the greetings were slower. Softer. Hesitant. Two women I used to sit beside turned their heads as I passed. Someone offered me a half smile that didn't reach her eyes. Another one waved like I was across the street instead of arm's reach away. I felt it in my back more than my face. Distance. Whispers had already done their work. I sat through the sermon. Didn't hear a word of it. After the closing hymn, I stood outside with my hands clasped in front of me. No one came over. I nodded to Pastor Harold as he passed. He paused, then just smiled, and kept walking. When I got home, I made coffee with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. They were winning in a way, not legally, not financially, socially. Sloane was laying bricks one soft accusation at a time. I wasn't cut off. I was concerning. I wasn't abandoned. I was difficult. I wasn't disrespected. I was unstable. I sat with that word like it was a stranger who had broken into my house. I took out a notepad, drew a line down the middle, left people I could call, right people who had already chosen. The right side filled faster. I folded the paper, tucked it in my drawer, and stood. Enough. I pulled up the saved email thread from the lawyer, Kara Finley Trust and Estate Law. Her assistant had offered 3 dates. I picked the soonest. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. I confirmed with one sentence I'll be there. Quiet entrance preferred. Then I opened a new document. Typed out every date, every dollar, every moment I could recall. July 2021, groceries on my card. October 2022, cash sent for Sloane's emergency dental. January 2023. Derek's 3rd request for mortgage float. February, the text that started it all. I labeled it Timeline. Trigger support clause. 4C. Then I closed the file, saved it to a flash drive, and placed it beside the folder in the safe. If they wanted to make me the villain, they could. They already had. But I wasn't going to play their version of the story. I was writing my own. I sat down, took a deep breath, and picked up the phone. This time, I dialed first. I walked into the room and sat at the end of the table. No one looked twice. No one asked why I was there. Diana smiled at me like we were old friends, not strangers playing polite. Sloane didn't even flinch. She tossed her purse down, adjusted her blouse, and started talking like she'd been running the world since morning. Let's finalize the vendor order, she said. Floral's confirmed sounds booked catering just needs the head count. Derek came in late. Said nothing to me. Took the seat beside her and nodded at everything. I took out a small notepad. Wrote the date. The time. A line across the top. Planning notes. Diana's event nobody asked. They assumed I was still footing the bill, still playing support, still too afraid to burn the bridge. They were half right. I wasn't burning anything. I was documenting. Diana spoke next. We'll need a photographer with donor clearance, preferably someone with campaign experience. Sloane cut in and cut. Don't worry, the party's paid for. She said it loud, clear, with a smile wide enough to prove a point. I wrote it down word for word. One of the women from Diana's team laughed. Well, it should be. This kind of exposure is priceless. Derek said nothing. He looked tired, pale, tense at the edges. But he let it all happen. Let his wife speak over him. Let his mother-in-law lead the room. Let me sit at the end of the table like a ghost with a pen. Someone mentioned press coverage. Another person brought up a local news contact. Names dropped. Connections claimed. I noted each one. When they asked for updated payment confirmation, Sloane said, "It's already authorized. We have a family account we use for these things." Another line on the pad. They kept talking. I kept writing. Half an hour in, they moved on to table layout. Sloane wanted head table floral arrangements custom matched to Diana's dress. A planner pulled out a tablet and showed designs. The price tag flashed once $1,750. That one, Sloane said. It'll photograph better. Derek gave a small nod. Barely moved. I looked at him. He avoided my eyes. When the meeting ended, Diana stood. Thank you all for being part of this. It means a lot to the campaign. Her team clapped. I stayed seated. Sloane packed up her notes. She walked by and touched my shoulder lightly like we were still pretending. Thanks for showing up. I didn't answer. Just gathered my things, buttoned my coat, and walked out into the cold. In the car, I opened my notepad again, flipped through everything I'd scribbled. One page for every lie, every false assumption, every financial decision made under the illusion I was still paying. They hadn't just spoken freely. They'd built the noose and handed me the rope. When I got home, I scanned the pages. Saved them to my flash drive. Labeled the folder Party Prep. Verbal confirmations, 4C build. Then I pulled out the safe, added the drive, and relocked it. The next morning, I got the notification. I walked into the lawyer's office before noon. No small talk. No waiting room chatter. Kara ushered me straight back, closed the door, and laid the papers out on her desk. I've drafted everything exactly as you asked, she said. One signature, and it's ready to enforce. I pulled the chair closer. My hands stayed steady even though my chest felt like it was holding a storm. The first page carried the trust's name. The second listed the property. The third spelled out Clause 4C in bold letters. Under it, Kara had added the new directive revocation of Derek Rourke's access, triggered upon proof of financial exploitation. I read every line. Slow, careful. My glasses slid down my nose. I pushed them back up. Kara didn't rush me. When I reached the end, the signature line sat there waiting. I picked up the pen. One stroke at a time, my name went down. No flourish, no pause. Just black ink across white paper. Kara slid a second document forward. Acknowledgement of enforcement. I signed that, too. Keep this copy, she said, handing me a sealed envelope. Don't mail it. Don't even hint at it. We hold until the trigger applies. I took it. The paper felt heavier than it should. On the front, in my handwriting, hold until Clause 4C applies. I slipped it into my bag. Stood. Shook her hand. Once it's triggered, she said, Everything moves fast. They won't see it coming. I don't want them to, I said. On the drive home, the envelope lay on the passenger seat. The radio stayed off. My hands gripped the wheel hard enough to ache. This wasn't revenge. It was protection. The plan Walter built was finally awake. All I had to do now was wait. At home, I set the envelope on the kitchen table next to my coffee mug. Opened the safe. Pulled out the folder. I slid the envelope inside beneath the trust documents beside the flash drive of notes from the meeting. Closed the lid. Spun the dial. Clicked the lock. For a moment, I just stood there, hand resting on cold metal, breathing. I'd spent years saying yes. Years bending. Years believing they would do the right thing if I just gave them more time, more help, more money. Now all it took was a single pen stroke to change the ground under their feet. I pushed the safe back into its corner, stood, rolled my shoulders once to release the tension. Then I turned to the counter, pulled the coffee pot toward me, and poured a fresh cup. The steam rose, curling against my face. It smelled bitter and sharp. I liked it that way. I sat down, cup in hand, staring at the calendar pinned to the wall. Tomorrow's square held one small note in my handwriting, confirm trigger. The word looked cleaner than I felt. I opened the bank email before the coffee even finished brewing. Subject line, urgent trust account withdrawal confirmation. My stomach tightened. I clicked. $12,000 cash withdrawal. Trust reserve fund. Signed authorization attached. I downloaded the PDF and stared at it. The signature on the form was mine, except it wasn't. Too smooth, too even the loop on the R, a dead giveaway. They hadn't even bothered to disguise it properly. I opened the file in full screen. The notary stamp was forged to a photocopied seal. My name, my address, my trust. All rerouted into a single transaction out of Cedar Falls Reserve. Clause 4C burned at the back of my mind. Exploitation, HARS, immediate forfeiture. I scrolled down. Second page, third page. The routing number went to a joint account under Derek and Sloane's names. Date stamped 2 days ago, right before the planning meeting. They'd done it while sitting across from me, smiling, talking about floral arrangements. I closed my eyes for a second. Not to cry, just to steady. This was no longer about hurt feelings. No longer about being cropped out of photos or ignored on porches. This was theft. Documented. Triggered. Locked in black and white. I printed the PDF. The machine hummed while the coffee pot hissed behind me. Page slid out. Warm in my hands, my forged name staring back. I reached for the safe. Pulled out the folder. Opened to the enforcement addendum. The last page still blank. Waiting for a date and a signature. I took a pen from the counter, wrote today's date, signed my name below. That was it. Clause 4C was no longer a theory. It was active. I pulled out the sealed envelope marked, "Hold until Clause 4C applies." Tore it open. Inside Kara's enforcement package. All the notices pre-drafted ready to serve. I laid everything out on the table, the forged withdrawal, the signed enforcement, the notices, the list of vendors, the flash drive. My kitchen looked like a war desk. I took a sip of coffee. It was bitter, harsh, exactly what I needed. All the years of bending, of paying, of excusing, gone with one transaction too many. They'd written my name on a piece of paper to take what they wanted. Now my real name sat on documents that would take back everything they thought was theirs. I stacked the papers, slid them into a large envelope, wrote a single word across the front, execute. Tomorrow, I'd drive it to Kara's office. She'd start the service process. Vendors would be notified. Locks would be changed. Utilities reassigned. Occupancy revoked. No shouting. No threats. Just ink and signatures moving quietly through a system Walter had built and I had now claimed. I closed the safe again. Turned the dial until it clicked. Stood in the quiet. The smell of coffee paper and ink filled the room. I picked up my phone, scrolled to Kara's contact, and pressed call. I handed Kara the envelope. She opened it without a word, scanned the first page, and nodded. And this is enough. More than enough. We sat across from each other at her desk. She didn't offer water. I didn't ask for any. She flipped through the documents, pausing at the forged signature. This triggers immediate enforcement. We'll start with filing the revocation. She reached for her laptop. Fingers moved fast. Trust transfer will be initiated today. I'll file with the county clerk before close of business. By Monday, the LLC will reflect your full enforcement rights. I didn't speak. I just watched. No need for a court hearing. It's built into the trust. Walter made sure of that. Smart man. She clicked something. The printer behind her hummed to life. Here are the vendor notices. We'll send certified letters to each. Party deposits will be reversed once we flag the bank activity. She paused. Would you like to cancel the event yourself, or let us handle that? Handle it, I said. She printed 2 more sets of documents. This one freezes all connected accounts, joint or otherwise, until the investigation is complete. I signed where she pointed. Line after line. Each signature quieter than the last, but louder in its impact. Occupancy notice will go out tomorrow morning, she added. Legally, they'll have 10 days to respond before we initiate lockout proceedings. I nodded. My hands didn't shake. Any communication you receive in the meantime, ignore it. Let me handle responses. She slid a small stack of pre-drafted statements across the desk. I tucked them into my purse. Felt the weight of them settle there. By noon, it was all in motion. The trust was now alive again, not forgotten, not dusty, not theoretical. Walter's design had always been simple: protect. What matters, remove what doesn't. As I walked out of Kara's office, the wind picked up. I pulled my coat tighter and crossed the street without looking back. I drove home slow. No music, no calls. My phone buzzed once I didn't check. At the kitchen table, I brewed coffee and opened my notebook. Under today's date, I wrote 1 line, notices sent. Trust enforced. I flipped the page. Started a new list. Locks pending. Utilities. Pending transfer, occupancy letter drafted, catering vendor cancel notice, queued financial inquiry, opened with bank fraud division. I underlined the last one twice. I didn't call Derek. I didn't message Sloan. I didn't respond to Diana's invitation that had popped up last night through someone else's forwarded link. Let them wonder why the caterers stop responding. Let them notice when the flower deposit vanishes. Let them scramble. I stayed still. That evening, Kara texted all notices confirmed, delivered. Next step begins Monday. You'll be updated daily. I replied, thank you. No calls. Then I turned off my phone, set it on the table beside the safe, made another cup of coffee. The night moved quiet around me. The house felt still, not empty, just clean. Like something had been cleared out that didn't belong anymore. I stood at the window, watching headlights pass on the street one by one. By morning, they'd noticed the first shift. The text arrived before I'd finished my first cup of coffee. Sloan, please fund the floral deposit today. You still owe us. No greeting. No pause. Just that. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the reply key. Then I set the phone down and reached for my mug instead. Another ping. Sloan, we already booked everything. Can you transfer $300 now? We're on a deadline. I scrolled up, read it twice. My jaw clenched. They had assumed I'd cave. They'd spent my money before even asking for it. Maybe they'd always done it. Maybe I'd just never noticed. I picked up the phone, typed 1 sentence. Me forward all invoices to my attorney. Hit send. Put the phone face down on the table. The silence afterward felt different. Not heavy, not guilty, clean. Minutes later, the calls started. Derek first, straight to voicemail. Then Sloan. 3 rings, then a hang-up, another text. Sloan. What attorney? We don't need to involve lawyers. This is family. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my notebook and checked Kara's update from last night. All vendor notices confirmed. Account freezes processed. Occupancy revocation queued. Everything moving quietly forward. I added a new line under today's date: Sloan request, floral deposit, refused. Another ping. Derek, Mom. What's going on? We already promised things. You can't back out now. I closed my eyes, took a slow breath. They still thought this was about promises, about guilt, about leverage. It wasn't. It was about a forged signature and a trigger clause they didn't even know existed. I stood, rinsed my cup, and poured another. The steam rose against my face, sharp and bitter. No one had ever taught me how to hold a boundary. I had to learn it the hard way. Years of bending until my back nearly broke. Years of paying and hoping and waiting for some gratitude that never came. Now it was just one line on a screen. Forward all invoices to my attorney. No fight, no lecture. Just a door closing they couldn't see. By noon, Kara sent me a short email. Floral vendor canceled. Deposit reversed. Funds frozen. I replied, received. I didn't look at my phone again for the rest of the afternoon. It buzzed, vibrated, flashed, then went quiet. Instead, I turned to the safe, pulled out the flash drive, added new screenshots, saved them under a fresh label: Vendor Pressure, Exhibit C. I shut the safe and clicked the lock, rested my hand on the cool metal for a second. They'd built their plans on my compliance. They didn't know I'd stopped cooperating days ago. They didn't know the ground under them had already shifted. I poured the last of the coffee, carried the mug to the window, and stood there as the light faded across the street. When the doorbell rang, I didn't move. I smiled through the toast and nodded when Diana raised her glass. To family support, she said, "Voice sugar slick." Everyone clinked. I lifted my glass but didn't drink. Sloan leaned in, touched my hand lightly. "Thank you for agreeing to handle the venue fee. I told them you'd call this afternoon." I smiled again, just once. Tight. Across the table, Derek avoided eye contact. The girls giggled over pancakes. The moment looked picture perfect. I played along, asked about flower colors, suggested neutral tones, pretended not to know the florist had already been cut from the budget. They laughed. They believed it. By dessert, Diana was already bragging about the turnout. "We expect over 70. Press will be there. The governor's assistant RSVP'd last night." I nodded. "I'll make sure it's covered." Their relief was instant. They thought I was folding, that the pressure had worked. I helped clear plates, kissed my granddaughters' foreheads, said goodbye at the curb like nothing was wrong, drove home in silence, straight to the kitchen, sat down, pulled out the folder, opened to the vendor list. Venue: Arcadia Event Center. Booking under Lena Rourke. Authorization code LR8827. I picked up the phone. "Arcadia. This is Lena Rourke. I need to cancel a reservation." The woman on the line hesitated. "For the Brant event?" "Yes." "May I ask why change in plans?" I said. "And I'd like the authorization code removed." "No one should be able to rebook it under my name," she typed. "Confirmed. Done. The reservation is canceled. Confirmation will go to your email." I thanked her and hung up. I crossed the venue off the vendor list. Wrote "canceled direct call confirmed 3:17 p.m. Then I highlighted the amount they'd planned to spend, $4,500, and scribbled beside it. "Funds frozen. Code revoked." The sound of my pen scratching the paper felt cleaner than any confrontation. They'd clinked glasses this morning, believing the lie I fed them. Now their venue was gone. Their timeline cracked. Let them scramble. I opened the laptop. Sent Kara the update. Attached the confirmation email. Subject line: Arcadia cancellation. Executed. I didn't gloat, didn't smirk, just finished my coffee and rinsed the mug. They'd taught me how to stay quiet for years, to nod, to smile, to obey. Now I was using it. Let them think they were ahead. Let them laugh toast plan. I'd already started the fire underneath their feet. I dried the mug, placed it back on the hook, turned off the kitchen light. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. Sloane raised her glass. To family who know their place, she said, smiling wide. Laughter rippled across the table. Diana nodded, pleased. Derek looked down at his plate. Someone clapped. Someone else added amen to that. I sipped my coffee. Didn't blink. The room was dim expensive, full of curated joy. Cloth napkins, candlelight, imported wine, and poison passed off as charm. I sat at the end, just close enough to hear everything, just far enough to be ignored. They didn't speak to me unless it was performative. Lena, could you take a picture? Lena, the server, forgot your water, want me to grab it. I smiled. Said thank you. Never asked for a refill. I watched Sloane work the room, air kisses, compliments, sideways jabs, hidden in laughter. She floated from chair to chair, like she owned the air between them. Derek barely spoke. Every time his eyes met mine, he looked away first. Dessert came. Some kind of overpriced mousse with edible gold leaf. I didn't touch it. I wasn't hungry. Sloane clinked her glass again. Let's raise one more for the weekend. For power, progress, and presence. She looked at me, just for a second. I took another sip of coffee. Bitter, strong. No sugar. I stood before the applause started. Thank you for dinner, I said quietly. Only 2 people noticed me leave. In the car, I sat for a minute before turning the key. Let the silence settle. Then I drove straight home, unlocked the safe, and pulled out the final envelope. Enforcement packet. Step 2. Immediate lockout notice. Kara had pre-signed her section. I signed mine. It was over. I checked the clock. 9:43 p.m. The courier would arrive at 8:00 a.m. Delivery by hand. Paper in palm. I placed the signed packet back into the envelope. Sealed it. One more formality remained. One I'd waited weeks to do. I reached for the smaller envelope beneath it, labeled in Walter's handwriting. He'd left it blank in case we ever needed it. Inside, authorization to change entry systems, revoke tenant access, and reassign occupancy. I signed that too. My hand steady. My name clear. Tomorrow, the house on Cedar Fall Lane would no longer be theirs. I turned off the lamp and left the documents on the table right next to the empty mug. I arrived late on purpose. The parking lot was full of expensive cars. Music drifted from inside. Through the tall windows, I could see sequins cameras and champagne. The whole thing looked like a gala, not a family gathering. Inside, the air was thick with perfume and nerves. Staff in black shirts moved fast between tables. Donor packets sat neatly at each place, setting with Diana's name printed across the top. Sloane laughed too loud at something Derek said. He looked stiff, pale around the edges. I stayed at the doorway for a beat, then stepped back out. 10 minutes later, the first shift began. Caterers rolled their carts out the side door. A guest tried to wave one down and was ignored. Someone whispered. The music hiccuped, cut off, then restarted softer. Then the lights flickered once, twice. Out. A low gasp moved across the room. The emergency lamps clicked on, throwing everything in dull amber glow. Phones lifted. Flashbulbs caught confused faces. I walked back in, paper in my hand, folder under my arm, every step deliberate. Who's handling this? Diana snapped at a planner. The planner stammered. We're not being paid. The deposits bounced. Everything's frozen. Sloane's face drained. She grabbed her phone. Derek pulled at his collar. Guests began shifting toward the exits. Another man walked in behind me, Kara's courier. He held a stack of envelopes. He began handing them out. One to Derek, one to Sloan, one to Diana. Certified delivery signatures required, each stamped with the trust's seal. Diana tried to laugh. This is absurd. Sloan opened hers. Her hand trembled. Occupancy revoked. 10 days to vacate. All funds frozen. Pending investigation for financial exploitation. Derek's envelope contained the same, plus bank records, plus the forged signature. I walked to the center table, set my folder down. I believe this is your RSVP, I said. No one spoke. The guests who hadn't left yet turned to look at me. Phones recorded. Whispers rose. The donor packets on the table looked like props from the wrong play. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't look at anyone for too long. Just opened the folder and slid the top sheet toward Derek. Clause 4C, I said. You signed your own trigger. He didn't touch it. His eyes flicked to Sloan. She stared at the paper like it might catch fire. Diana opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Behind me, another staff member unplugged the DJ's equipment, carried it out. The room smelled of wilted flowers and panic. I picked up my folder, closed it, turned toward the exit. Nobody tried to stop me. The courier followed, collecting signatures as he went. I stepped outside into the evening air, pulled my coat tighter, walked to my car. Inside, the engine hummed soft. I rested my hands on the wheel, took one long breath. Tomorrow, the locks would change. I turned my phone face down after the 5th call. By noon, it had buzzed 17 times. Derek, Sloan, unknown numbers. Voicemails stacked like threats in a neat digital row. I didn't listen to a single one. Instead, I met the locksmith at Cedar Fall. He nodded politely. Whole system. Yes. Inside and back doors. Codes too. Anyone else need access? No, I said. Just me. By 10:42 a.m., every lock was changed. By 11:30, the new security codes were registered with the HOA. I signed the paperwork and emailed the confirmation to Kara. She replied immediately. All documents filed. Occupancy rights revoked. Utility accounts re-registered. They've been notified. At 1:04 p.m., Kara forwarded me her final message to Derek and Sloan. Subject enforcement of Clause 4C. Trust reassignment body effective. Immediately, you are no longer authorized occupants of the Cedar Fall Lane property. Any attempt to enter or access will be considered unlawful trespass. All keys, codes, and entries have been changed under the authority of the trust. One sentence. Clean, sharp, legal. No explanation. No apology. I read it twice, then deleted it. I didn't need to keep reminders anymore. I sat in my own kitchen, drank black coffee, and waited. The quiet filled the house like it belonged here. No one knocked. No one screamed outside. They knew better now. The last voicemail came at 4:19 p.m. I didn't listen to that one either. Just swiped it away like lint off a sleeve. The power had shifted, and I didn't need to hold it in my hands to know it. At 5:0, the HOA president called to confirm final receipt of the updated title. Your name is the only one we'll recognize from here on out, she said. I thanked her. She didn't ask questions. At 6:30, I moved the folder from the safe to the fireproof box near the front closet. Labeled it, Resolved. The trust was intact. The house was quiet. The phone was silent. I sat down at the kitchen table with my mug and wrote 2 lines in my planner. Locks changed. No calls returned. Then I flipped the page and kept going. Sloan posted 3 times in one day. The first was a smiling photo, with the girls captioned, Sometimes life takes turns. Grateful for what truly matters. The second was a quote image. Strong women don't break, they rebuild. The third was a video. Shaky, poorly lit, and rehearsed. We just want peace. This family means everything to us. We're working through some misunderstandings privately. She blinked too often, wore soft colors. Background music played. I watched it once then, downloaded it. Filed it under Optics Response, Exhibit D. That same night, Derek left a voicemail. His voice cracked halfway through. "Mom, please just talk to me. I didn't know it would go this far. I thought we could fix it." He didn't mention the trust. The forged signature. The 6 vendor invoices tied to my bank. Please talk to me." I saved the voicemail, labeled it, added it to the folder. I didn't call back. They wanted to manage perception. Sloan was a master at that. Twist a headline, stage a moment, post a hug, bury the facts beneath hashtags and lighting filters. But TrustLaw didn't care about tone. And neither did I anymore. Kara emailed again the next morning. Her message was short. Their attorney reached out. Blame-shifting partial denial. No formal dispute filed. I replied with one line, "Keep everything. Document tone." They weren't suing, they were spinning, trying to shape a story where I looked bitter, confused, cruel. But I wasn't the one forging signatures. I wasn't the one who drained 5 figures from an account with someone else's name on it. I wasn't the one making party guests believe the matriarch paid for it all, then cutting her out of the photos. The foundation had never been solid, just polished. Now that it was crumbling, they wanted to tape it together with warm words and soft lighting. But I'd kept everything. Emails, texts, the forged withdrawal, the booking confirmations, the video from the meeting, the call logs, the sudden spike in Derek's account right after the trust payment disappeared. All dated, all time-stamped, all backed up. I brewed coffee, poured it slowly, drank it by the window as the sun burned off a thin layer of fog. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt still. For the first time in months, nothing was pulling at me. No guilt, no obligation, no buzzing phone begging me to fix someone else's mess. I wiped the counter, took the empty mug to the sink, washed it by hand. Then I opened my planner. Tomorrow's square was blank. I sat on the porch and drank my coffee. No phone in my hand, no papers in my lap, no plan pressing against the clock. The mug was warm. The air was quiet. The sky above Cedar Fall was sharp and blue. The house felt mine again, not just on paper, not just in a trust folder buried in a safe. It breathed differently. The rooms no longer held tension. The corners didn't watch me. Even the silence inside had changed. It wasn't the silence of being left out. It was the silence of no longer needing to be let in. The old wind chime on the back eave swung gently. The new locks had clicked into place days ago. The mailbox still had their names crossed out in black pen. Nobody had come to replace them. They hadn't tried since the notices were served. No lawyer, no court papers. Just Sloan's curated pity posts and Derek's voicemails that kept dropping in like falling leaves. I hadn't blocked them. I just didn't pick up. Let them speak into the static. Let them wonder if I was listening. Maybe I was. But I didn't owe them a response. They had filled the years with words, requests, excuses, promises, expectations. Now I had nothing left to give in return, not even a sentence. The porch floor creaked when I shifted my foot. Familiar. Solid. I thought about the girl I used to be. The woman who said yes before the full question was asked. The one who paid quietly, showed up uninvited, stood behind the camera. She would have apologized. She would have tried one more time. She would have explained why it hurt. I wasn't her anymore. I'd learned how to protect peace without needing applause for it. Inside, the dishwasher beeped. I didn't move. I watched a leaf drift from the neighbor's tree. It landed softly on the step. Stayed still. No words left. No performance left. Just coffee, a key in my pocket, and a door that only opened if I said so. I reached for the mug again. Still warm. Still mine. I opened the door and saw the package on the step. No return address, no handwriting, just a plain brown box sealed tight. I brought it inside, set it on the counter, sliced it open with the edge of a butter knife. Inside photos, loose, no order, no label, no note. The first one was from Derek's 7th birthday. I remembered the cake. He'd picked it out chocolate with green frosting. He'd wanted to be a soccer player back then. Before the grades, before Sloan, before any of this. Another photo me holding him after his high school graduation. I looked tired, proud. He looked distracted. I remembered he'd left early that night to meet up with her. More photos, beach trips, Christmas mornings, a few from when Walter was still alive. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just sifted through the stack one at a time, let them pass through my hands. They weren't trying to hurt me, not this time. Maybe they thought they were making peace, or clearing out what they didn't want to carry anymore. That was fine. I slid the stack back into the box, walked to the hallway dresser, pulled out the second drawer. Not the safe, not the folder, not the documents, just the drawer where I kept old chargers, extra pens, a pair of glasses I didn't wear anymore. I placed the box there, closed the drawer, not out of spite, not out of mourning, out of peace. I didn't need to display the past to prove it happened. I lived it, every second of it, every gift, every voicemail, every silence. I had nothing left to fix. That afternoon, I made one more call, scheduled a meeting, drove into town, walked into the notary's office with a sealed envelope and my ID. The woman behind the desk smiled. "Updating your will today." Yes. I signed the new papers, designated a different beneficiary, set up a modest educational fund for someone else, someone who didn't even know me yet, someone who wouldn't ask me for $3,000 and threatened to cut me out. The notary stamped everything, slid the copies into a folder. "You're all set." I thanked her, walked out. No ceremony, no grand gesture, just a clean line drawn where the old one had faded. When I got home, the porch was still warm. The lock clicked open like it had been waiting. I stepped inside, carried the will folder to the safe, opened it, set it gently inside, closed the lid, spun the dial. Then I went back to the kitchen, refilled the coffee pot. I clicked the burner on and waited for the water to boil. No rush, no noise, just the small hiss of heat, the quiet hum of a house that no longer took more than it gave. The tin of ground coffee sat exactly where I left it. I scooped it slow, let the scent rise first before I poured the water. Steam curled into the air. I reached for the chipped mug at the back of the shelf, the one with the faded white letters. Still the owner. I held it in both hands, warmed my palms, let the silence press in. No phone calls, no footsteps overhead, no bags dumped by the door, no "Mom, I need," or just "one more favor," or "you'd do this if you loved us." They weren't here, and they wouldn't be again. The locks were changed. The mail had stopped forwarding. The will was rewritten. The safe was closed. I had finished things without a single scream. No courtroom, no dinner table shouting match, no finale. Just a list of dates, a folder of proof, a final cup of coffee. I carried the mug to the stove, stood there breathing in the bitter warmth. This house used to carry their shadows in every corner. Toys on the floor, shoes by the door, groceries I paid for, decorations I never chose. I don't miss any of it. Not the pretending, not the guilt. I don't even miss being needed. What I have now isn't flashy. It's not loud. It's one mug, one kitchen, one woman standing still for the first time in years. I take a sip. The edge of the mug hits the same spot it always has. Familiar. Solid. The air shifts slightly as the heater kicks on. I walk to the table, set the mug down in the center. Not on a coaster, Not next to a pile of bills or unanswered questions. Just there. Simple. Unbothered. The rest of the world can spin. Campaigns can fall apart. Apologies can come late or not at all. It doesn't matter. I'm not waiting anymore. I take one more breath. Strong. Steady. The house smells like me again.